current comics, and we cover them. I'm your host, Obi-Wan Jabroni. Now, today's story we'll be covering Sword number 8 through 11. Now, this is the finale for Sword and ending the whole book. Written by Al Ewing, with art by Guy Villanova, and colors by Fernando Cifuentes. Sword Commander Abigail Brand has been making her own moves behind the scenes, moves she believes Storm and Krakoa won't be happy with. Meanwhile, Henry Gyrick, acting commander of the Alpha Flight space program and servant of Orcus, has a scheme of his own, which includes the which includes the mole in the Sword organization, who has been feeding him data. So, with that, let's start talking nerdy. First up, we have Sword number 8, Unbroken. And we open in Arakko's upper atmosphere, and we see Storm hovering just inside the atmosphere of her kingdom. And as she flies towards the planet and to her seat of power, we get an internal monologue. Above what was once Mars, I soar in a private sky. I took an envelope of atmosphere with me to Sword Station 2, the Keep. On leaving, I wrapped it around me like a cloak, cautioned the air from deserting me to seek out the vacuum, bade it to stay warm against the chill of open space. I could have gone by a gate, but the people of Arakko, this world I helped bring to life, were forged in an endless war. They respect those who can defend their broken lands. I know how Arakko thinks, but they must expect from me. But casual miracles are my stock in trade. I am an Omega mutant, one of the few, and more, I am their regent. I took that title. I held it. I hold it still. Arakko has not broken me, and I will not break. I will not break for Arakko. Not yet. And we switch to the arena. I'm sorry, I've lost my spot. Okay, no. We switch to the arena. A giant molten lava man stands at the center of the arena, and he calls for a challenge to Storm's throne. And we learn his name is Fiery Colderock. And as he continues to taunt and demand to know where Storm is, snow starts to fall around him, and he is suddenly hit by a blizzard that buries him up to his head in the snow. Storm lands in front of him, and asks if he yields. He stutters and says yes. Later at the Great Ring Council Chamber of Arakko, Storm enters a council meeting and catches a knife that comes flying towards her face. She smiles and takes an empty seat and compliments the thrower on the blade's balance and quality. She tells them that she called them here to talk about Tarn. She calls him out on going against her orders and attacking the Hellions anyway. And Tarn smiles and says yes, he did. And he will do as he pleases, and he challenges her to her throne. Storm agrees and stands and leaves the Great Ring. An hour later at the arena, Tarn stands in the center of the arena as Storm flies in to meet him. He uses his power to turn off her powers, and as she falls to the ground, he uses them again to mutate her into a grotesque shadow of her former self. He smiles and says, "What is a storm without her storms?" Storm grits her teeth and produces a knife from her sleeve and charges Tarn. He is caught by surprise, and she is able to drive the knife into his chest as she says, "You don't know? Then I will show you. I don't need my storms. If I ever see your eyes glow again, I will touch the blade that rests against your heart once. That's all it'll take. Before I kill you, are you sure? Can you bear the great work ending like this, old genomatic mage? By all means, then, take your chance." He yields and tells her that he still won, as she is powerless and broken now. She removes the knife from his chest and smiles and says, "I am still Regent of Arakko. I have not yielded or been defeated." And Tarn bursts out to laughter and returns her to her normal self as he says, "Madness. You are powerless. You are broken. You can't possibly be a further challenge." Storm the uncaring. You fooled me, Aurora, with your Krakoan disguise, but now I see you as you are. You are of Arakko, Windrider, and perhaps, yes, perhaps even of a myth. And later on at Storm's quarters, we learned that she had tests ran, and Tarn had agreed and perfectly returned her to normal power and physicality. And she moves to her balcony and looks out at Arakko, and we get an internal monologue as she stands there smiling in the rain. I know how Arakko thinks, what they expect. Across the plains, the thunder is a song. I am exhilarated, dangerously so. The air smells electric and alive, and the clouds have taken shape. I will not break for Arakko, I tell myself. Not yet. But I know storms, and when they do break, is when they show their true faces. And that ends this issue. Taking us to sword number 9, Best Laid Plans. Now, we open on the Alpha Flight space station, and Henry Gyrick meets with Jimmy Hudson and tells him that Orchis has plans to shut down the mutant takeover of Mars. And we switch to Arakko. The Shi'ar Imperial Guard walks through a gate with Cannonball and the Shi'ar Empress Sandra. They are greeted by Frenzy, and they inform them that Storm is indisposed at the arena at the moment. An alarm goes off, and we learn that another ship has entered the atmosphere and is heading towards them. 5 people appear, teleported from the new ship, and yell death to the Shi'ar Empire, and we learn they are called the Lethal Legion. The Imperial Guard charges and starts to easily get smacked around. One of them rips off Fang's head, and another possesses 2 Imperials and has them attack each other. As the Imperial Guard tries to pull back, and a storm of lightning crashes down onto the Lethal Legion as Storm lands and greets the Empress. Back at Alpha Flight, Gyrick smiles as he watches the Legion be defeated on a nearby monitor. And he tells Jimmy that the test may have failed, but he learned a lot, and he has a mole in Sword. He calls his mole at Sword and asks if he is ready. And we switch to the Sword Station, and we see WizKid answer Gyrick's call and says that he is more than ready to take down Sword. And that ends this issue. Leading us to Sword number 10, Triple Threat. We opened 5 hours ago at the Sword Station. WizKid wakes up and gets dressed as we get an internal monologue. My name is Takashi Matsuo, and everyone always tries to figure me out. Even on Krakoa, I get looks, glances, studious looking away. Humans and mutants aren't that difficult, not to a guy using a hover chair. You want to figure me out? I have a morning routine. It starts like this. I push my right hand onto my left side. I tuck in my left arm, swing my right over my body. Push it up a little to the right, slide to the left under so I'm on my elbows, push my both hands, and now I'm sitting up. It takes 5 seconds. I barely think about it. But it's a set of movements that I have learned. My physicality is something I've learned, something I've relearned, something I've worked for. But other things came easier. My mutant power is technology. Any technology you can name, I control or build from whatever's around. I'm still finding the limits of that. So far, I don't have any. Does that seem arrogant to you? Should I learn humility? People tell me I have a chip on my language is nearly impossible. Picture it. As a kid, I could build engines from junk, but I had to convince people I wasn't stupid. Now, I'm second in command on a space station. I turned 18 in 2 months. Do I seem arrogant to you? The outer housing of my chair is that big, bulky Professor X style mutant culture aesthetics. Professor X is walking now. I'm not. Krakoan medicines helps with the dyslexia, but with a complete T11 break like mine from so long ago, well, the healing gardens can only do so much. And I'm not into resurrection, not before I have to. So everyone tries to figure me out, and maybe that's why I'm going along with the whole plan. Why doesn't he hang out? Why hasn't he lost his death cherry? His mutant name's so cringe. He's so full of himself. He thinks he's a rock star. Which, to be fair, I absolutely do. And We switch to now on Araco. Storm hovers. Before we start, I'd like to make something clear. This was created as a piece of diplomacy. If you have grievances with the Shi'ar or with us, we are happy to hear them at any time. Peaceful protest is encouraged here. If your cause is just, we would be honored to lend what political pull we have with the Shi'ar to, and I will not abide the murder of my guests. And she easily takes them all out and calls Cable at the sword station, saying something isn't right. And we see Cable as he goes over to his computers and tells her that he doesn't see anything, but he will keep an eye on things over here. When WizKid enters the room and tells Cable that Bran sent him up here to help. Cable says good and puts a hand on WizKid's shoulder, and when he does, he is hit with an electrical surge that knocks him unconscious. WizKid rolls to the computers and starts to get to work for Gyrick. Back out on Rocco, Storm still feels uneasy when a bunch of portals open around them and more of the Legion appear. Now, later at the sword station, Cable wakes up to flashing lights and alarms on the computer. He calls the security team and learns that an evacuation order came from his office. And as he starts to tell them not to do so, an explosion happens and the station starts to fall to Earth's surface. Now, back at Alpha Flight, WizKid enters the room and meets with Gyrick. He tells Gyrick that it is done, and Gyrick smiles and says good as he leaves the room. WizKid looks out the window, and we get an internal monologue saying, when you tell people what they already think, they bend over backwards to believe it. It fits his worldview to put me in a neat little box. But Krakoan medicine helps me, and Krakoa doesn't ask about my insurance plan first. I'm second in command on a space station. You think that happened somewhere else? So it wasn't the truth. But I wasn't a lie entirely either. Mutants and humans really aren't so different. We're all Earthers, citizens of the Sol system. If we think we can bring everybody up to where we are, drag them here if we have to, is that arrogant? Should mutants learn humility? And it zooms into his shoulder, and we see a shrunk down Abigail Brand sitting there and smiling. And that ends this issue. Taking us to our final issue, Sword number 11, The Final Frontier. We open in Australia, and Manifold stands in the desert watching the sword station fall to Earth's atmosphere. And Cable calls out telepathically to him from the sword station, saying, I'm grateful for the short-term notice assist on your end. We're going to need your unique skill set to make this work. The Peak's thrusters are dead, and my telekinesis can't push a 1,000-ton weight out of the Earth's gravity. Well, all I can do is guide it. And unfortunately, I have a bad case of techno-organic virus that I use my TK to keep in check, and vice versa. So when I use too much TK, well, things tend to get complicated. Now, meanwhile on Araco, Storm tells everyone to stand back as she raises into the air, and Frenzy stays close and suddenly coughs and asks why she is struggling to breathe. Storm's eye crackle with energy, and she says, that's the air pressure. The weight of the air. One of the things that make weather. I'm keeping the effects as contained as I can, but exerting my mutant gifts to this extent is hard to hold back. You're feeling the very edge of it. Step back, Frenzy. I don't want to kill you. Pressure. Pressure building in the air. High pressure means fine weather, a beautiful day. But when a storm comes is when the pressure suddenly drops. And suddenly all of the Lethal Legion fall to their knees and start to vomit up blood, and some of their eyes pop out of their skulls. Back in Australia, the sword station plummets to Earth, and Manifold steps forward and strains as he makes two massive portals. The station passes through one and out of the other, back into space. Manifold falls to the ground, panting, and says, I nearly didn't have it. And Cable calls back to him, saying, well, for what it's worth, now that you've reversed the direction, I've got it. It's much easier to push with momentum than it is to pull against. Pull against it. I can get the peak back into orbit from here. That said, it wasn't without cost. I can commit my telekinesis to controlling my techno-organic viral load again. My first person singular is back on track. But am I alright? I guess we'll see. Over and out. And we switch back to the Alpha Flight station, and Jimmy Hudson, Henry Gyrick, and WizKid stand and watch as Gyrick's plan falls at every turn. Jimmy says that 3 Shi'ar delegates are dead because of Gyrick and his plan, and that Department H will hear about this. Gyrick says it's justified to stop Krakoa's expansion, and Orchis understands how dangerous the mutant nation is. When WizKid cuts in and interrupts them and says, "You're damn right we're dangerous, Henry. Dangerous to people who murder our guests on our watch. Or did you think I was going to keep smiling at that? I've blown up a lot of things, sword included. So here's a fun fact. Charles Xavier can't design hover chairs. This thing's not made for tight corners, but it is made for smuggling in everything I need to hack your systems. Too bad you were scanning for Krakoan tech. Mine's even better. I've just finished downloaded everything, Henry. Every secret file, every dirty deal. You're right through. I don't think Department H will do much with it. That's why I'm sending you straight to the Shi'ar. You better start running, Henry." And Gyrick runs out of the room and tries to call Orchis for help when an airlock closes in front of him and Brand appears at the door window. And he tells her they have nothing to talk about. Mutants are trying to take over the solar system. Brand looks at him, smiles, and says, "Oh, I can out Krakoa, Henry. Honestly, it needs to happen, and soon. But I have a problem with you being so damn bad at it. Making WizKid your man on the inside. He was an Avenger for 2 minutes, Henry. He's been a mutant all his life. Like I've been a spacer all mine. I might have mutant DNA, but I was born and raised on Oxus. Nobody on Krakoa asks, of course. They don't even know my name is. Brand's a code name, 'cause my hands heat up, you see. This defines me in mutant culture, apparently. As if mutants aren't just another flavor of Earther. I needed Krakoa for a little while to make the Sol system a serious player in the great game, but now, like you said, the stage is a little too big for Eric and Charles and all their drama. Oh, poor sweet Hank, trying so hard to be the necessary monster. Storm, maybe she's got some steel, but if she's still respecting Arako's customs instead of imposing her own, no. I think Sol's better off if I get rid of them all and run things for myself. Don't you? Anyway, time for us to leave." And she opens the outer airlock, jettisoning Gyrick into space and killing him. WizKid calls her on comms and asks what happened. The system says that Gyrick left the station. Brand turns, walks away, and smiles, saying, "Oh, shit." Brand turns around, walks away, and smiles, saying, "It's not about what happened, Taki. It never is. It's about what comes next." And that not only ends this issue, but ends the entirety of the Sword line. Hope you enjoyed the video this week. Join us next week as we cover Savage Avengers number 24 through 28. Thanks for watching. As always, remember to like, subscribe, and share our video to help spread our brand through the world. Also, leave a comment down below. Feedback is always welcome. You can also follow us on the Jabroni Nerd Facebook page. So, until next week, guys, keep talking nerdy.